Hey guys, welcome to the channel and the video, another episode of Hacking Modding News and Info. This week I'm only covering just a few things that are really a little bit more important on a couple of different scenes. I may do a follow-up part 2 tomorrow or the day after, I'm really not sure. The things that I didn't cover really weren't all that important, so we'll see. In this one we are going to cover some PS5 stuff regarding the discovered Webkit and what they're doing with that, some PS5 games that have been dumped, as well as PS5 bounties. Then we're going to talk about the Switch and how the developer of Atmosphere got Atmosphere running on a Mariko Switch, and then we're going to talk about an update to 3DS and to the Luma3DS custom firmware. For those of you who are new to these episodes, if you want to know a little bit more about what they are all about, down in the description is a brief summary. So let's kick things off this week with some PS5 news. Alright, so regarding the PS5, we're going to cover three things: the discovery of the Webkit and what they're doing with it, dumped games, and then the bounties. Let's start with the Webkit. First, Sony announced that this generation of PlayStation would not have a browser. Of course, developers and hackers knew that there had to be something in there, and sure enough, almost immediately they found the Webkit or the browser. You can access it, really anyone can. It's just kind of hidden. I'll put in the description a link that will take you somewhere where you can see exactly how it's done. Anyway, the thing here is that this isn't really a traditional browser in the sense that it doesn't have an address bar. So you just can't type an address and go to wherever you want. Now, you know that on the PS4, in order to be able to hack the ones that are hackable, you absolutely need that address bar. So it doesn't exist here, but in that tutorial that I'm going to link in the description, it shows you how to get to Twitter, and then from Twitter you can pretty much go anywhere where there's a clickable link, and you can use the Twitter search and get kind of crafty, and that's kind of what people did. Anyway, now some people have discovered how to use a proxy to redirect where the PlayStation goes, and instead of going to the manuals.playstation.net site, you can direct it to any URL of your choice. So all of that is explained here at PSX Hacks. I'll put a link, of course, to all this stuff, and the download files are there as well. There's a little explanation here for those of you who are interested. What this means for the end user right now is really not much, but of course, if something does develop, I will let you guys know. Let's move on now to the dumped games. Alright, so these PS5 game dumps apparently are being achieved through two different methods. One of them is by putting the actual game disc in a certain type of Blu-ray drive. These are BD-XL capable Blu-ray disc drives. They're for your PC, but they need to have the MediaTek chipset controller +6 read offset, whatever the hell that is. There's a link here to the psdevwiki.com that explains it. And then the other way they're doing it is by just downloading some PS5 package files from the PlayStation Store. Now, either of these methods results in you having a package file that is encrypted, and you can't get into that package file unless you decrypt it. Furthermore, if you do manage to decrypt it, you still have to deal with the binaries that are also encrypted, such as the e-boot and whatnot. Now, this is the same thing that happened with PS4 package files. Back when Resident Evil 2 Remake came out, the game had actually leaked right around the time of its release, and even though it was the full game, because it was encrypted, people weren't able to get into the package file. And even if they did, they couldn't decrypt the binaries to make it backwards compatible, or I should say backport the game. So again, for the end user as of right now, these dumped PS5 games really don't have any purpose. If that changes in the future, of course, I will let you know. But keep in mind, guys, that, we saw similar things happen on the PS4 scene when the PS4 first came out, and we didn't get a hack until a few years in, I think 4 years in, when 1.74 came out. And by that time, it was pretty difficult to find a PS4 that was on 1.74 firmware or lower. And then 2 years after that, we got a 5.05 hack. So even though we're seeing some stuff happen early, it still may be a while before we see anything, and that's if we see anything. And now that we're on that subject, this serves as a perfect point to transition into the next story. And we now know that Sony has added the PlayStation 5 to their bounty program. They did so here recently. It's popped up over at HackerOne. To my surprise, the base amounts are the same as the PlayStation 4. However, this doesn't mean they are paying the same amounts. They can actually be paying more. Sony can pay any amount they want in between these categories. These are just base starting amounts. So for example, if somebody finds a security risk that falls between the medium category and high category, Sony doesn't pay them just $2,500. Based on what it is, they could pay them $4 grand, $5 grand, $8 grand. Same thing in this category between high and something that is critical. Yeah, they can pay out 10 grand, but they can also pay out 15, 20, 30, 40, whatever. And this holds true for all of their bounties, whether it's a console or something regarding their PlayStation network. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you a quick example of what I mean, that even though these base amounts in these categories are the same, that Sony can actually be paying higher amounts to those people who find vulnerabilities within the PS5. Let's go ahead and use developer The Flow as an example. So we go here to the Hacktivity, we scroll down a bit, we can see that The Flow 29 days ago got a payout of 10 grand. That is his second $10,000 payout, by the way, over the past few months or so. Whatever this vulnerability was for the PS4, it was not disclosed. So when we come over to the policy, if, let's say, for example, The Flow finds a vulnerability that is similar to the PS4 one that he got paid $10,000 for, if he finds something like that in the PS5, even though it's similar and maybe even virtually identical, he might not make just 10 grand. Sony may offer him a little bit more, maybe 15 or even 20 grand, because it's for the PS5. It's a newer console. He got that 10 grand because the PS4 had been out already for a while and whatnot. So that same vulnerability on the PS5 may actually be worth more. I'm assuming that Sony would do it this way because common sense would dictate that would entice more developers and hackers to turn things over if you are paying a little bit more for PS5 stuff than you would PS4 stuff. But I don't know if that's what they are doing. I'm just hypothesizing here. Either way, we know that these bounties have already affected the PS4 scene in a negative way, at least negative to the end users. Let's see what happens with the PS5. Only time will tell. Alright, and now let's head on over to the world of the Nintendo Switch, where developer SciresM, who is responsible for the custom firmware known as Atmosphere, has managed to get Atmosphere running somewhat on a Mariko Switch. This is a version 2 or the V2 of Nintendo Switches that are out there. Now this comes with a couple of caveats. One is that this doesn't work 100%. It still has a lot of issues and fatal flaws and things like that that have to be ironed out. And he does state that this is going to take a long time. He also confirms that on these Mariko switches, you can pretty much forget about there ever being just a software type hack, that in order to hack them, you will always need some type of hardware, more specifically a mod chip. And you can also pretty much forget, at least in my personal experience, about ever seeing a solderless mod chip, because really on the Switch, there's no place you can just connect one just like that. The eMMC is modular and that pops out and you can connect something there maybe, but you still need to solder the mod chip onto other points. So yeah, if you want to hack one of these Mariko switches or switch lights, you're going to have to use a mod chip no matter what, and SciresM has confirmed that. And also, SciresM went ahead and he tweeted a couple of links, which mainly are designed for developers. These are for people who know what to do with his script or scripts. But he states here, you can use my script to decrypt and edit and re-sign your own gateway mod chip firmware update literally right now. So what this means is that they can use the Team Executor mod chip, they can do whatever they want with the firmware, and then, you know, they could reinstall it back into the mod chip, and yeah, they can do pretty much whatever they want. This can also lead to mod chip cloning, maybe a modified version of Team Executor's mod chip or something different altogether, who knows. What we do know is that a mod chip will be required, as I mentioned before. Some soldering is still going to have to take place regardless of what comes out. But let's see if anything does come out. Keep our fingers crossed, and let's hope that this materializes into something sooner than later. Alright, and the last bit of news we will be covering today has to do with the 3DS. Recently, Nintendo updated the 3DS's firmware to 11.14. This is the first time in 360 days that the firmware of the 3DS actually update. So it went almost exactly a whole entire year. Anyway, as a result of this latest update broke the custom firmware that is popularly used on the little system known as Luma3DS, but almost immediately Luma3DS was updated. It is now on version 10.2.1, and of course it supports this latest 11.14 firmware. There's also a fix or two it did here and there. Now, I do recommend that before you update to 11.14, you go ahead, download the zip file, copy and paste the contents of the zip straight onto the root of your SD card first, and then update to 11.14, and that's just going to save you a little bit of headache, because if you do it the other way and you update first when you try to boot back into your system, since this latest update breaks the older versions of Luma, you're not going to see anything. You're going to get that error message, and yeah, this just makes it a lot easier. Alright guys, so that is going to do it for this video. As I mentioned at the beginning, if I have a chance, I will try to do a follow-up video, a part 2 to this, either tomorrow or the next day, if I have a chance, because I am currently working on 5 different videos all at the same time, and I think I'm a little bit way in over my head, along with everything else that, you know, I have to do. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, you know, I appreciate you watching. If you found anything here informative, useful, helpful, entertaining, or you just want to throw some love or appreciation towards the channel, as usual, the best way to do any of that stuff is just to hit that like button, maybe subscribe if you haven't already. Much love going out to everyone out there. Be careful, be safe, but have fun, and we'll see you on the next one.